Hong Kong is one of the most efficient cities in the world. Fast, vertical, and engineered for movement. But that same efficiency can quietly drain your budget if you don't understand how the city works. Most tourists don't overspend because they're careless. They overspend because Hong Kong is designed around habits locals learn over years, not days. In this video, we're looking at 10 places where visitors waste money without realizing it, and the simple shifts that keep your trip focused on experience, not expenses. 1. Paying for the view instead of the food. Hong Kong's skyline is one of the most photographed on the planet, and the city has quietly built an economy around that fact. Restaurants facing Victoria Harbour fold the view into the bill long before the food arrives, turning a simple lunch into something priced like an occasion. The dishes themselves rarely justify the markup. What you're really buying is altitude, glass, and the illusion that height equals quality. Most people don't question it. The panorama does the convincing for them. Meanwhile, residents tend to eat elsewhere, not out of frugality, but because they know the skyline is best appreciated from the street, not from a table pressed against a window. What helps is understanding the separation between spectacle and substance. In Hong Kong, a single elevator ride can triple the cost of a meal without changing anything happening in the kitchen. Vertical real estate carries its own logic, and restaurants perched above the harbor follow it faithfully. The food stays the same, the floor number does the work. But the view itself is free. It's waiting along the waterfront, on the Star Ferry, and on the promenades that frame the harbor like a public gallery. The people who know the city well eat in alleys, markets, and compact dining rooms where steam, not scenery, fills the space. Then they step outside for the skyline, letting the city reveal its best angle without attaching a price to it. In a place built upward, it's easy to mistake height for value. Once you stop linking the two, Hong Kong's dining scene opens up in a completely different way. 2. Treating the MTR like a tourist attraction. The MTR is the quiet engine of Hong Kong, a system built for speed, not spectacle. It moves through the city with a precision that feels engineered rather than improvised, linking districts through tunnels and platforms designed to eliminate friction. Every transfer, every exit, every corridor reflects a city that treats movement as a kind of civic responsibility. Yet many visitors approach it as if it were optional, choosing taxis or ride-hailing apps for trips the network was built to handle with less cost and less uncertainty. Road travel in Hong Kong carries its own logic. A route that looks simple on a map can slow to a crawl the moment traffic thickens, turning a short ride into a meter-driven expense. The MTR avoids all of this by slipping beneath the congestion, running trains so frequently that waiting becomes almost theoretical. For people who live here, the system isn't a convenience. It's the default, the baseline, the assumption. What complicates things for newcomers is the scale of the network. It reaches far beyond the districts most visitors recognize, threading into neighborhoods where surface travel becomes unnecessary. A journey that feels like it requires a car is often faster underground, where the city's density stops being an obstacle and becomes part of the design. The real efficiency of Hong Kong reveals itself when you move the way the city was built to move. The MTR isn't just cheaper, it's the rhythm the rest of the city is calibrated around. Following that rhythm turns transportation from a cost into a constant. 3. Buying octopus cards. They never use up. The Octopus Card is one of Hong Kong's quiet triumphs, a slim piece of plastic that turns the entire city into a tap-and-go environment. It handles trains, trams, convenience stores, supermarkets, bakeries, and vending machines with the same soft beep, making movement feel almost weightless. The system was built for fluidity, not stockpiling, yet many visitors treat it like a prepaid wallet that needs to be fully loaded before they can start using it. That's how balances end up stranded on cards that fly home in suitcases instead of circulating through the city. What complicates things is the instinct to prepare for the whole trip at once. People unfamiliar with the system often add 300 Hong Kong dollars or 500 Hong Kong dollars on day one, assuming they'll need it, unaware that top-ups are everywhere. At station gates, convenience stores, supermarkets, even small kiosks tucked into corners. The infrastructure expects small increments, added as needed because the card is meant to follow your day rather than predict it. Octopus was designed around flexibility. A modest balance is enough to start moving, and adding more takes seconds. The card adapts to the rhythm of the city, not the other way around. Residents treat it as a living balance, something that grows and shrinks with each errand, each commute, each small purchase. Visitors who load too much end up carrying unused value that could have covered a final meal, a ferry ride, or last trip across the harbor. The system works best when the balance stays light, topped up in small steps, used freely and allowed to match the pace of the day, rather than the anxiety of planning ahead. 4. Shopping in the wrong districts. Hong Kong's layout quietly dictates what things cost. Prices shift not by category but by location, and a single block can separate a fair deal from a marked up one. Districts like Tsim Sha Tsui, Causeway Bay, and parts of Central are built around visitors. Bright storefronts, familiar brands, and signage designed to feel approachable. The same product sold in Mong Kok or Sham Shui Po can cost half as much simply because the surrounding streets serve a different audience. Patterns emerge once you watch how the city organizes its retail. Some areas are built for browsing, others for buying, and the difference shows up in the rent long before it shows up on a price tag. People who live here navigate this without thinking. They know which malls are for convenience and which are for value, which streets are curated and which are practical. Visitors tend to drift toward the places that look international, unaware that familiarity carries a surcharge. Hong Kong's retail ecosystem is layered. Flagship stores cluster in high-rent districts, neighborhood shops anchor the residential zones, and specialized markets sit just outside the tourist orbit. Moving one station in any direction can shift the entire economic logic of what you're buying. Electronics settle into Sham Shui Po. Fashion finds its footing in Mong Kok. Everyday goods normalize the moment you leave the waterfront. The city isn't uniformly expensive, it's selectively expensive. Once you start navigating by district rather than by brand, Hong Kong stops behaving like a luxury mall and starts behaving like the marketplace it actually is. 5. Paying peak hour taxi fares. Hong Kong's traffic has a rhythm of its own, tightening and loosening in predictable waves that reshape the cost of every surface journey. When the city compresses during peak hours, even short trips stretch into slow crawls and the meter rises with every stalled intersection. The fare isn't tied to distance so much as the tempo of the streets, and that tempo slows dramatically twice a day. A ride that feels harmless at noon can become noticeably more expensive by early evening, even though the route hasn't changed at all. Congestion is the quiet force behind this. The city's density funnels cars into narrow corridors where red lights stack into long chains and movement becomes incremental. The MTR slips beneath all of this, unaffected by weather, traffic, or the evening surge, which is why people who rely on the system daily rarely think of taxis as a first option. Surface travel is something they time carefully, choosing it only when the streets have space to breathe. What makes taxis feel deceptively simple is the illusion of directness. A car appears to offer control, a straight line from point A to point B, but Hong Kong's roads rarely behave that way during busy hours. Every pause becomes a charge, every bottleneck a small tax on impatience. The system is fair and regulated, but it cannot escape the physics of a crowded city. Understanding when the roads move freely changes the entire equation. Off-peak, taxis are fast and reasonable. During rush hours, they become a luxury shaped by the city's own momentum. Matching your travel to the city's quieter moments turns transportation from a cost into a choice. 6. Eating dim sum in tourist zones. Dim sum is one of Hong Kong's most democratic meals, a ritual built on shared tables, rolling carts, and dishes that arrive in small, deliberate portions. In the wrong district, that simplicity becomes something else entirely. Areas like Tsim Sha Tsui and Central often attach a premium to the experience, pricing dishes according to foot traffic and skyline proximity, rather than the quiet craft happening in the kitchen. A shrimp dumpling that costs 25 Hong Kong dollars in a neighborhood tea house can climb to 60 Hong Kong dollars the moment the dining room overlooks a landmark or the menu switches to English. What gives dim sum its value isn't luxury, it's repetition. The best kitchens rely on muscle memory, chefs folding the same dumpling hundreds of times a day, steamers opening and closing with practiced timing, servers moving with a pace set by regulars who know exactly what to order. Tourist zones disrupt that rhythm. They replace familiarity with convenience, and convenience always carries a surcharge. Across the city, people who care about dim sum treat it as a destination meal. They cross districts for strong tea, brisk service, and prices that reflect the food rather than the view. Mong Kok, Jordan, and North Point are filled with dining rooms where the bill stays grounded because the customers expect value, not spectacle. Dim sum works best when the focus stays on the table. The steam, the timing, the small decisions that make each dish feel intentional. The places that honor that rhythm rarely advertise it. They don't need to. The meal speaks for itself. 7. Buying bottled water. All day. Hong Kong's humidity plays tricks on people, nudging them toward cold drinks long before they actually need one. Convenience stores understand this perfectly, which is why chilled bottles sit at the front of every shop, priced low enough to feel harmless but high enough to add up over a day of walking. It's easy to fall into the pattern, one bottle in the morning, another in the afternoon, a third after dinner, without noticing how quickly the cost stacks. What gets overlooked is how many places offer water for free. Malls, parks, promenades, and MTR stations all have refill points, but they blend into the background unless you're actively looking for them. The city assumes you'll use these stations the way residents do, and that assumption becomes expensive for anyone who doesn't. Bottled water isn't a trap. It's simply the easiest option in a climate that makes effort feel unreasonable. People who know the city well move differently. They pace themselves, drift into shade without thinking, and carry a bottle they refill throughout the day. The heat still presses in, but it doesn't dictate their spending. A single container replaces a dozen impulse purchases, and the savings accumulate quietly. Humidity in Hong Kong is a slow, steady tax on anyone unprepared for it. Each bottle feels insignificant, but the pattern isn't. Once you start using the refill points built into the city, the day feels lighter, physically and financially. Convenience stops being something you buy and becomes something the city already provides. 8. Paying walk-up prices for attractions. Planning carries real weight in Hong Kong, though the impact isn't obvious until you compare receipts. Many major attractions quietly operate with two parallel price structures, one for people who buy tickets ahead of time and another for anyone who arrives without preparation. The gap looks small on paper, but it compounds across a trip, especially for places that draw steady crowds. Spontaneity feels natural to visitors, yet the city treats it as a premium choice. Attractions like the Peak Tram, Ngongping 360, and Sky 100 are built around predictable demand. Online sales help regulate flow, smoothing out the surges that would otherwise overwhelm queues and staff. Walk-up tickets absorb the uncertainty, the extra personnel, the longer lines, the infrastructure needed to handle people who appear without warning. Those who know the system rarely pay the posted rate at the entrance. They secure their spots long before they arrive. What catches newcomers off guard is how consistent the pattern is. The listed price is often the highest version of the experience, while a ticket purchased a day earlier can cost less and move you through the process faster. The view doesn't change, the cable car doesn't change, the elevator ride doesn't change, only the price does. The city's logic is straightforward. Plan ahead and the system works with you. Show up unannounced and you absorb the friction. Buying early isn't about chasing discounts. It's about stepping into a flow the city has already optimized. When you shift to that rhythm, the cost of seeing Hong Kong's landmarks settles into something far more reasonable. 9. Staying in the wrong part of the city. Hong Kong measures distance differently from most places. What looks far on a map often collapses into a short ride once you move with the MTR. Yet many visitors still anchor themselves to the districts they recognize by name. Central, Tsim Sha Tsui, Causeway Bay. These areas sit at the center of the city's image, and the room rates reflect that. The closer a hotel is to the skyline, the more the price folds the view into the bill. A different pattern emerges just outside those zones. Neighborhoods like North Point, Tai Kok Tsui, and Hung Hom sit one or two stations away from the postcard districts, but operate on a completely different economic logic. The streets feel calmer, the crowds thin out, and the cost of a night drops sharply without changing the fundamentals of the stay. The skyline, the food, the transit access, all of it remains, minus the surcharge attached to famous names. What misleads newcomers is the assumption that farther out means harder to reach. Hong Kong's transit system erases that idea. A hotel that appears remote on a map can be closer in practice than one located in a district where taxis crawl through congestion and sidewalks overflow. Mobility, not proximity, is what determines convenience here. Understanding the city's scale shifts the entire equation. Staying slightly beyond the tourist orbit doesn't reduce access. It restores balance. A single station's distance can turn an expensive stay into a practical one without changing anything about what you can reach or how quickly you can reach it. 10. Visiting during peak seasons without realizing it. Hong Kong's character shifts with the calendar, and the cost of being here shifts with it. Certain weeks compress the city, hotel rates jump, flights fill, and even casual meals require patience. These spikes aren't random. They follow holidays, school breaks, and weather patterns that funnel people into the city at the same time, tightening everything from room availability to ferry schedules. Some residents plan their entire year around avoiding these stretches. The challenge isn't the season itself, but the lack of context around it. Late December brings holiday traffic, March and April stack festivals on top of mild weather, and October delivers the kind of climate that draws everyone at once. Prices rise because demand overwhelms supply in a place where space is already scarce. The city isn't inflating costs, it's reacting to pressure. What catches newcomers off guard is how different Hong Kong feels outside these windows. June, September, and early November reveal a looser version of the city, lighter air, shorter lines, and prices that settle back into something closer to normal. Movement becomes easier, and the pace feels more like everyday Hong Kong than the compressed version visitors often encounter. Timing shapes the experience more than most people expect. Choosing a quieter month doesn't change what the city offers, it changes how freely you can move through it. When the calendar aligns with your trip rather than against it, the entire visit takes on a different texture. Hong Kong doesn't try to trick tourists. It simply moves at a pace that rewards awareness. Once you understand how the city is built, the unnecessary costs fall away, and what's left is the good part. The food, the energy, the skyline, the rhythm of a place that never really stops. If even one of these ideas helps you travel a little smarter, that's money you can redirect toward the moments that actually matter.